In 1882, there was this man who was suffering from just violent, debilitating migraines. I mean, migraines so bad that he could scarcely leave his bed, let alone actually hold down a job.
Right, he was essentially bedridden.
Exactly. But somehow, in that state, he managed to write what is arguably one of the most joyful, cheerful blueprints for the perfect human life ever conceived.
Which is just wild. And of course, that man was Friedrich Nietzsche.
Yes. And today, for our deep dive, we are taking a philosophical wrecking ball to the traditional map of personal growth. Because, usually when we talk about self-discovery, there's this underlying assumption that we're going on a well, like a gentle treasure hunt.
Oh, totally. Like a peaceful walk in the woods.
Right. You wander into the woods, maybe you book a week at some silent meditation retreat, and the prevailing idea is that if you get quiet enough, you'll eventually, just find yourself.
Yeah, that's a very comforting narrative.
It is. The culture kind of treats your identity like a lost set of car keys just sitting under the couch cushions of your mind. You just have to lift the cushion, find the keys, and drive off into the sunset.
Which implies that your true self is just sitting there in the dark.
Right.
Like it's fully formed, completely intact, just waiting around to be passively discovered.
Yeah.
But when we look at the actual mechanics of human psychology, that passive model completely falls apart.
It just doesn't work.
No, because it fails to account for the sheer chaos of the human mind.
Which brings us to the core mission of today's deep dive. We're unpacking a fascinating piece of writing titled The Sculpture of Self, Nietzsche on Becoming Who You Are.
It's such a great title.
It really is. And our goal today is to extract the highly practical, deeply psychological tools hidden in this philosophy. We want to equip you, the listener, with a functional blueprint to literally sculpt your ideal self out of the raw material of your own psyche.
But right at the center of this, there's a proposition that sounds, well, like an absolute riddle.
Yeah, how can you become who you already are?
Right. On its face, it's a staggering contradiction. I mean, if you already possess this identity, there shouldn't be any becoming involved at all. You just are.
You just exist.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But unpacking that specific paradox, that tension between what exists in potential and what actually has to be forged in reality, that is where the actual grueling work of self-actualization begins.
And I think it's critical to set the tone right out of the gate here, because when you hear the name Friedrich Nietzsche, there's this immediate tendency to feel a sense of academic intimidation.
Oh, sure. People instantly picture the mustache.
Yes. The imposing mustache, the dusty 19th century German university halls, the impenetrable jargon. But we are stripping all of that academic distance away today.
We have to, because this was never intended to be abstract philosophy just to be debated on a classroom whiteboard.
Right.
It's a highly personal, actionable framework. What we're really looking at is the foundational architecture for what modern psychology would eventually label self-actualization, way before they even used that term.
Which is incredible. Let's start by contextualizing where this famously cryptic phrase, become who you are, actually comes from. It first shows up in an 1882 book of his titled The Gay Science.
And it's worth noting that Nietzsche himself referred to this specific work as the most personal of all my books.
Which is the key that unlocks the whole thing, I think, especially when you look at what was actually happening in his life when it was published.
The irony is just staggering.
It really is. I mean, the title, The Gay Science, implies joy, lightness, this sort of spirited intellectual playfulness. But in 1882, his life is essentially collapsing.
Yeah, he's dealing with the incredibly weak reception of his previous work, so zero professional validation.
Right, and a major friendship of his had just completely soured, leaving him totally socially isolated and physically, I mean, his health is in total freefall.
The chronic vomiting, the migraines.
Blindingly painful migraines, to the point where he had to permanently resign from his professorial position.
So by every standard metric that society uses to measure a successful life, he's a total failure. He's unemployed, chronically ill, alienated, intellectually ignored, and just entirely alone.
So I have to pause and play skeptic for a second on behalf of anyone listening.
Go for it.
How can we trust a framework for personal flourishing from a man whose own life was a disaster? I mean, how does a guy who is sick, unemployed, and alienated sit down and write a cheerful book about the good life?
It's the essential question.
Why should we view him as an authority on how to thrive?
Well, asking that forces us to dismantle the massive cultural caricature of Nietzsche. If you ask the average person on the street what he represents, they'll probably describe a gloomy, pessimistic nihilist.
Oh, definitely.
The ultimate edgelord cynic.
Right, the guy who just wanted to tear down human values, declare that nothing matters, and plunge society into despair. But the reality is the exact inverse. His unifying, driving purpose wasn't destruction, it was to build.
But build what, exactly? Because he is pretty famous for taking a sledgehammer to traditional morality.
He was. But he was taking a sledgehammer to it because he recognized that the foundation was already rotting. Ah, okay.
He was looking at European society and seeing this massive, terrifying moral vacuum. It was expanding rapidly because of the decline of religious authority.
Because for centuries, institutional religion provided this absolute blueprint for behavior.
Exactly. It offered a universal checklist. This is good, this is bad, this is your purpose, this is who you are supposed to be.
And when that absolute blueprint starts losing its grip on the culture, you don't just get freedom, you get widespread existential panic.
Yes. Nietzsche wasn't celebrating that emptiness, he was terrified of it. He viewed that vacuum as a profound danger, a literal sickness creeping into the societal psyche.
Because when people lose their external framework for meaning, they don't just automatically become free, self-determining people.
No, they usually collapse into apathy.
Right.
Or worse, they latch onto dangerous totalitarian ideologies just to feel certain again.
Right, so his cheerfulness in the gay science isn't the cheerfulness of a guy just having an easy afternoon.
Not at all. It's the intense, almost manic relief of a doctor who believes he's just synthesized the antidote to a plague.
Wow, that's a great way to frame it. So the fact that he's standing in this messy, painful reality, vomiting, migraines, isolation, it doesn't invalidate the cure.
If anything, it proves how potent the medicine is. That he could maintain such intellectual joy amidst that much physical suffering.
Okay, so his desire to cure this societal sickness leads directly into his highly individualized interpretation of what it means to be virtuous.
Yeah, we really need to dissect that word, virtue.
Yeah, because for a modern listener, that word carries so much baggage. We hear virtue, and we instantly think of rigid rules.
Moral purity, self-denial.
Strict obedience to authority. But Nietzsche had a visceral aversion to those legalistic, guilt-inducing ethical systems.
He fundamentally despised them. Though, to be fair to the history of philosophy, the concept of virtue ethics has a rich lineage.
Right, going back to the ancient Greeks.
Yeah, Aristotle or even Eastern philosophers like Confucius, they all converged on this one central premise. Virtue and happiness are deeply interconnected.
You can't have true human flourishing without the cultivation of character.
And Nietzsche agreed wholeheartedly with that part. He believed character was everything.
But he completely rejected the societal execution of it.
He rejected the universality of it. Traditional virtue ethics assumes there's one ideal way to be human, that the rules of goodness apply to everyone equally, regardless of their nature.
And Nietzsche thought that was a psychological catastrophe.
Exactly. He asserted that cultivating character can't be a collective, standardized process. It has to be strictly individualistic.
To make this concrete for you listening, I want to introduce an analogy. Let's look at traditional morality, the kind Nietzsche was fighting. It operates like a mass-produced, one-size-fits-all uniform.
A very uncomfortable one.
Right. Society hands you this uniform and says, here, this is the outfit of a good person. So you put it on, but maybe the sleeves are 2 inches too long.
Or it's suffocatingly tight across the chest.
Yeah, or the fabric just makes you break out in hives. But the cultural expectation is that you have to wear it, ignore the discomfort, and never complain. Because everyone else is wearing it.
And if you do complain that the uniform doesn't fit, society tells you that you are defective, not the uniform.
Exactly. But Nietzsche's concept of virtue is entirely different. It's not a uniform at all. It's a custom-tailored suit.
I love that analogy.
It requires exact measurements of your specific psychology, your unique drives, your individual capacities. It's stitched exclusively for your frame. And the catch is, literally no one else in the world can wear it.
That captures his philosophy perfectly.
Yep.
He actually articulates this exact sentiment in the Spoke Zarathustra.
Oh, right.
Yeah, he wrote that between 1883 and 1885. There's a specific quote that anchors this whole concept. He writes, "My brother, when you have a virtue, and it is your own virtue, you have it in common with no one."
You have it in common with no one. If we pause and just sit with the weight of that for a second, the implications for the listener are massive.
Oh, it's a paradigm shift.
Because on one hand, it's the ultimate liberation. You are officially given permission to take off the ill-fitting uniform. You don't have to perform someone else's definition of goodness anymore.
But on the flip side, the sheer responsibility of that is terrifying.
It really is. It completely eliminates the safety net of societal approval.
You can't just measure your worth by checking boxes on a cultural scorecard anymore.
Right. You can't just say, well, I didn't break any laws. I go to community meetings. I say please and thank you. Therefore, I'm a good person.
Nope. If your virtue is entirely your own, you have to design the blueprint yourself. You are solely responsible for forging the path.
Which introduces the most urgent, practical question of this whole deep dive. If virtue is entirely unique to you, as singular as a fingerprint, how do you actually figure out what your specific virtues are?
How do you take the measurements for the suit?
Exactly. Especially when you spent your entire life wearing the uniform.
And this is where his framework radically diverges from modern self-help. Because his first step towards self-knowledge is not peaceful introspection.
He is not the silent retreat.
No. The first step is violent demolition. You have to take a philosophical wrecking ball to your own mind.
A wrecking ball?
Yes. You must systematically smash through your cultural baggage, your inherited beliefs, familial expectations, and all the self-serving narratives that have calcified in your psyche over the years.
But why such a violent approach? I mean, why can't I just slowly, gently untangle my beliefs? Why the wrecking ball?
Because we are remarkably adept at self-deception. We all harbor these self-serving narratives that heavily distort our view of reality and our own motivations.
That makes sense.
We convince ourselves we hold certain beliefs because they're good, when in reality we hold them because they're safe or because they win us approval.
Right. So to achieve genuine self-knowledge, you basically have to assume that everything you currently think you know about yourself is a fabricated compromise.
Exactly. What you perceive as your unified identity right now is an illusion.
Wait, if my current identity is an illusion, what is actually operating the machinery of my life right now? What is the me that's going to work in paying the bills?
Nietzsche would argue that it's a chaotic multiplicity of competing drives.
A multiplicity of drives.
Yeah, it's an internal battlefield. You have biological urges fighting against inherited social conditioning. The primal fear of ostracization battling the desire for authentic expression.
So it's just habits I mimicked from my parents competing with ideologies I absorbed from school.
Right. All these distinct contradictory drives are constantly fighting for dominance, fighting for their turn at the steering wheel of your behavior. At its core, the unexamined self is just formless chaos.
Formless chaos. Well, that completely reframes the challenge, but it also introduces a massive problem. Some analyses of his work point out that because our internal state is this chaos, we must creatively fashion something out of it.
The self is made, not found.
Made, not found. That phrase is the definitive death blow to the lost keys under the couch analogy.
Completely. You aren't searching for a pre-existing hidden treasure. You are standing in a raw wilderness, and you have to forge the tools to build a shelter.
But logically, I have to push back on this wrecking ball concept for a second.
Okay, let's hear it.
If the first step is to actively demolish all my cultural narratives and societal conditioning, if I swing that wrecking ball and successfully demolish the entire structure of my current identity, and all I'm left with is formless chaos and competing biological drives, isn't that just a fast track to a severe psychological collapse? I mean, if I demolish the building, I'm just standing in a pile of rubble. If the self is made, what actual material am I supposed to build with? This sounds like a recipe for absolute nihilism.
It's a very valid structural concern. If you strip away everything society handed you, is there anything structurally sound remaining? Or do you just fall into an empty void?
Right.
Well, Nietzsche anticipated this exact terror. And his answer, which he wrote about in Beyond Good and Evil, is that when you clear away the debris of external opinions, you do not find an empty void.
You don't.
No, you hit bedrock. He introduces this concept he calls the granite of spiritual fatum.
The granite of spiritual fatum. And fatum translates to personal fate or destiny.
Yeah, precisely. He posits that deep down, at the absolute foundational layer of our psychology, there is a core that is unteachable and unchangeable.
Okay.
It's the granite foundation upon which the true self must be built. He describes this core as a predetermined decision in answer to predetermined selected questions.
Let's break that phrase down because it's a bit dense. A predetermined decision in answer to predetermined selected questions. What does the mechanics of that actually look like for us? How do we experience a predetermined decision on a Tuesday afternoon?
Well, you usually experience it in moments of absolute extremity. Think about a time when you were faced with a cardinal problem.
Like a massive ethical dilemma.
Yeah, a catastrophic life choice or a situation that completely threatened your value system. Let's say you discover widespread fraud at your company.
Oh, that's a good example.
The societal drive the uniform tells you to stay quiet, protect your income, don't rock the boat. The biological drive tells you to seek safety.
Right, keep your head down.
But in that extreme moment, when all the superficial noise is stripped away by the sheer gravity of the crisis, an involuntary, unchangeable voice rises up from that granite core. And it simply says, I cannot stay silent. This is I.
Wow.
It isn't a logical calculation. It isn't something you learned in a corporate ethics seminar. It is an undeniable structural resonance with a specific course of action. It's the unteachable core of who you are.
So it's a visceral gut-level pull. It's the internal compass that dictates your absolute yes and your absolute no to human behavior.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It was always there, but it was buried under decades of rubble, under the desire to be polite, to fit in, to avoid conflict.
So the wrecking ball of self-inquiry doesn't destroy the granite.
No, the granite is indestructible.
The wrecking ball merely shatters the fragile, artificial structures built on top of it, clearing the dirt so you can finally recognize the shape of your own foundation.
You nailed it.
But relying on moments of extreme crisis to reveal this granite core seems, well, dangerous and really inefficient. We can't all just wait around to stumble into a massive ethical dilemma to figure out who we are.
Obviously not.
And trying to find this internal compass while just sitting alone in a room analyzing your thoughts is notoriously unreliable because of those self-serving narratives we talked about.
It's a trap of our own biases. And Nietzsche seemed acutely aware of this limitation.
Which makes his practical advice for how to locate this granite core so counterintuitive, because he essentially argues that to accurately map what is hidden deep inside yourself, you have to look entirely outside yourself.
It is a brilliant psychological pivot. He provides a highly practical external tool for the listener to find their granite. You want to know what your unteachable core values are? Look at who you admire.
Admiration is the diagnostic tool. This is where we can really upgrade our metaphors. Think of admiration as a highly sensitive metal detector. You're walking through the massive, chaotic field of human history and society. You don't know exactly where your own gold is buried.
Right.
But as you observe different people, this internal detector occasionally goes off. It beeps. But the critical mechanism here is that a metal detector works through magnetic resonance.
I see where you're going with this.
It only beeps when the magnetic field of the detector resonates with the metallic frequency of the object buried in the ground. In this framework, the feelings of profound reverence and awe you experience when observing someone else, those are the beeps.
Yes.
They are a physiological recognition of a shared frequency. You can only feel deep, soul-stirring admiration for a virtue if that exact virtue is already dormant in your own granite core.
That concept of resonance perfectly captures the psychology of it. Admiration is never arbitrary. Nietzsche believed that the people who fill you with genuine reverence, not just casual entertainment or superficial envy, but deep awe, they serve as literal luminous beacons.
They're externally illuminating the internal path.
Exactly.
So we aren't just talking about historical figures here. We're talking about analyzing the virtues of your immediate friends, your family members, public figures, artists. If you feel a profound sense of inspiration when you witness someone's behavior, that feeling isn't just a polite nod to their talent.
It's a critical data point about your own architecture. It's a trace element of your own unactualized potential. Some brilliant analyses point out that being in the presence of these admirable individuals should entice us to overcome our current limitations. These figures act as a stepladder towards our highest self.
A stepladder? That totally changes the function of a role model, because traditionally society encourages us to put the people we admire on untouchable pedestals.
Oh, yeah. We build statues of them.
Right. We worship them from afar and we say, wow, they're special and I'm just normal. But if they are a stepladder, the function isn't worship, the function is climbing.
Exactly. A pedestal is passive. A stepladder demands action. They're demonstrating the upper limits of a virtue that you possess in potential, and their existence pulls you upwards.
I want to make this intensely personal for you listening right now. Let's test this mechanism. Think for a moment. Who fills you with genuine awe?
Good question.
When you survey the world, maybe it's a tireless community organizer, a fiercely independent author, a visionary founder, or just a friend who handles adversity with incredible grace, who makes you stop and think, the way they navigate the world is extraordinary.
According to this framework, that feeling of awe is a mirror.
It's reflecting your own latent blueprint back at you. If you revere their unwavering courage, it means courage is fundamentally etched into your granite core. If you are moved to tears by their creativity, creativity is your unteachable fathom. You're recognizing your own frequency in their actions.
But identifying the frequency is where the danger of complacency creeps in.
How so?
Because recognizing your potential in a mirror or acknowledging the existence of a stepladder achieves absolutely nothing on its own.
Right, it's just data collection.
The potential must be forcibly converted into reality.
Which brings us to the most demanding phase of this philosophy. Passive observation is utterly useless. Discovering your core values is literally just walking up to the starting line.
And Nietzsche was incredibly rigid about this transition. You have to move out of the realm of thinking and step into the arena of doing.
And in this strict demand for action, he was heavily influenced by his own primary role model, the legendary German writer Johann Wolfgang von Goethe.
Right.
Goethe laid down a maxim that Nietzsche absorbed deeply. He asked, "How can a man come to know himself? Never by thinking, but by doing."
Never by thinking, but by doing. I mean, that quote is the ultimate devastating call out to chronic overthinkers everywhere.
Oh, absolutely. You cannot analyze your way into becoming who you are. You cannot journal your way into a fully realized identity. You have to step into the laboratory of action and run the experiment.
And that laboratory requires ruthless creative experimentation. If we return to the metal detector, if your detector starts beeping wildly when you observe artists, then your psychological fate demands that you cultivate your own creativity.
You can't just become an art critic. You have to pick up the brush.
You must take on the physical and mental labor required to embody those ideals.
And if your resonance pulls you toward entrepreneurs, it might mean you have to face the terrifying prospect of quitting your secure day job.
You can't just safely read biographies of founders on the weekend. You have to expose yourself to the risk of the market. You must find practical ways to integrate those admired traits into your daily behavior.
And the inevitable reality of that process is brutal. You will act, you will fail, you will learn, and you will repeat.
It's an exhausting loop.
Which naturally introduces a very practical logistical problem for the listener. Let's say I follow this framework. I identify my core values through admiration. I start experimenting, I quit my job, or I start painting, or I take a highly controversial stand on an ethical issue. And inevitably, because I'm new to this, I fail spectacularly. I face rejection, struggle, public embarrassment. In the midst of that failure, how do I know if I'm actually on the right track?
It's a crucial distinction.
Yeah, how do I differentiate between the necessary pain of growth and the stubborn pursuit of the wrong path?
Well, Nietzsche anticipated the need for a compass during this phase of experimentation. He provided an internal metric for evaluating the truth of your actions. He called it the enhancement of life as a standard of value.
Okay, let's ground that philosophical phrasing in reality, the enhancement of life. What is the actual mechanism of that metric? How do I use it on a Tuesday afternoon when my project has just crashed and burned?
It operates as a deeply physiological and psychological gauge. When you engage in these new experimental behaviors, you have to bypass societal feedback entirely and ask yourself a biological question.
Which is,
how does this action make me feel? Does this behavior, even if it is incredibly difficult or currently unsuccessful, energize and enliven my spirit? Does it increase my feeling of inner power? Or does it leave me feeling drained, weak, resentful, and deadened?
So the metric of success is entirely decoupled from external validation.
Completely.
It's not about whether the action was successful in the eyes of your peers. You might fail terribly at a creative endeavor. You might paint something hideous, but the raw act of creating it made you feel vibrant, alive, and fundamentally aligned with yourself.
Precisely. The enhancement of life is a measurement of vitality. If an action, no matter how taxing or unpopular, brings you a profound sense of vitality, you're moving toward your true self. You're acting in accordance with your granite core.
And conversely, if an action brings you money and praise but drains you of spirit, leaving you feeling hollow, you are moving away from your true self, regardless of what society tells you.
Exactly. To help visualize this progression, he recommends this very specific, profound exercise. He advises us to mentally gather all the things, traits, and people we have genuinely honored and admired throughout our lives, and to set them up in front of us.
Just lay them all out.
Yeah. Examine these objects of admiration collectively. Consider how one trait completes another, how one broadens your understanding, and then he delivers a line that just completely stops you in your tracks. He says, see how these accumulated admirations form a ladder, which all the time you've been climbing to find your true self.
Wow. And the culmination of that thought completely reorients our spatial understanding of identity, because he follows it up by writing, "For your true self does not lie deeply hidden within you. It is an infinite height above you, at least, above what you commonly take to be yourself."
It is an infinite height above you. It's not the lost keys under the couch.
It's a sheer mountain peak that must be scaled.
Ah.
You extract the materials for the ladder from your deepest admirations, and you climb that ladder through relentless action and the pursuit of vitality.
And if we step back and connect this framework to the broader timeline of human understanding, something remarkable emerges.
Oh, I know where you're going with this.
This concept of continuous upward growth, of striving to synthesize a higher self through action. It anticipates one of the most significant psychological breakthroughs of the 20th century.
Because if we're talking about an internal template that dictates our psychological health and a drive toward a higher self, we are essentially preempting the entire humanistic psychology movement by over 70 years.
Easily.
The through line from this 19th century philosopher to the pioneering work of Abraham Maslow is just direct and undeniable.
The connection is profound, and it's not a coincidence. Abraham Maslow, the architect of the hierarchy of needs and the concept of self-actualization, was deeply influenced by Nietzsche's writings.
They shared this highly unconventional, optimistic view of human potential that just flew in the face of the behaviorist models of their time.
Let's examine the foundational metaphor they both utilize to explain this potential, because it bridges the gap between philosophy and psychology perfectly. The acorn analogy.
Right. Both Nietzsche and Maslow believed that just as a tiny acorn contains the complete internal genetic template for a massive oak tree, an individual human contains a latent template for their ultimate self-becoming.
The acorn doesn't need to wander the forest to find the oak tree. It inherently is the oak tree in potential.
It simply requires the right environmental conditions, soil, water, sunlight, and the agonizing biological struggle of breaking out of its hard shell to grow into its destiny.
That template of potential is the key. Maslow's entire professional focus was dedicated to understanding how individuals achieve extraordinary levels of psychological well-being, and his conclusion was that they achieve it by becoming, more and more fully, who they already were in potential.
He echoes Nietzsche's concept of the granite core entirely here. The gradual, deliberate embodiment of one's internal values isn't just a nice hobby. It is the fundamental, non-negotiable task of psychological health.
But introducing the concept of psychological health naturally introduces the specter of illness.
The dark side of it.
Yeah, there is a deeply terrifying flip side to this biological imperative. If actualizing this internal potential is the absolute prerequisite for health, what is the consequence of failing to do so?
What happens to the psychology of a person who looks at the towering stepladder of their highest self and says, you know what? That looks exhausting. I think I'm just going to stay comfortable here on the couch. I'm going to keep wearing the uniform.
This is where Maslow issues a stark, chilling warning to modern society. In his writings from 1965, he analyzed the consequences of this exact scenario. He argued that to betray, suppress, or ignore your inner ideals doesn't merely result in a mild sense of boredom.
It's not just feeling unfulfilled.
No, it actively, aggressively plants the seeds of deep psychological disease within the mind.
And these specific diseases are referred to as metapathologies. Can we break down the clinical reality of a metapathology? What does that actually look like in the day-to-day life of a modern individual?
A metapathology is the toxic byproduct of neglected potential. If you have inherent capacities, unique talents, if you have that granite core pointing you decisively toward a specific calling, and you willfully neglect it for the sake of comfort or social approval, that potential doesn't just evaporate.
Right, it doesn't just go away.
It turns rancid. It metabolizes into a psychological toxin. A person suffering from a metapathology will begin to experience profound alienation from themselves and their community.
They develop a corrosive cynicism.
Exactly. Viewing all enthusiasm as naive, they sink into a deep, pervasive apathy and ultimately suffer a complete collapse of meaning. They might have a great salary, a nice house, and zero physical ailments, but they are psychologically starving to death.
So the fundamental task of health isn't just biological survival. It's the courageous embodiment of your values.
Yes.
Willfully ignoring the person you are meant to be is literally manufacturing your own psychological illness. The uniform is suffocating you.
Which brings us perfectly to the central metaphor that gives this deep dive its title, the sculptor of self.
Yes. To synthesize everything we've discussed, the granite core, the wrecking ball, the ladder of admiration, and the danger of metapathologies, we have to look at the philosophy of the legendary Renaissance sculptor, Michelangelo.
It is the ultimate visual synthesis of this entire demanding psychological process.
Michelangelo famously held a very peculiar view of his own genius. He claimed that he actually deserved very little credit for his masterpieces.
Which sounds absurd when you stand beneath the towering perfection of the statue of David.
Totally absurd. But his guiding philosophy was that the beautiful, finished works were already present, fully formed, inside the raw block of rock. He famously stated, "Every block of stone has a statue inside it, and it is the task of the sculptor to discover it." And perhaps his most poignant articulation of this idea, "I saw the angel in the marble and carved until I set him free."
If we overlay Michelangelo's artistic philosophy onto Nietzsche's psychological framework, the parallels are exact and illuminating. The you that you must ultimately become is already inscribed in your values. It is the angel trapped in the marble.
The preponderance of all your latent virtues, the core that resonates with the people you admire, that structural template, reflects who you are in the truest, most profound sense. The angel's already there.
The template exists. The granite fatum is real. The angel is undeniably in the rock. But, and this is the massive, unavoidable but, that destroys the passive self-help narrative. You do not just blink your eyes, think positive thoughts, and watch the angel magically appear.
No, you have to pick up the tools and execute the brutal, exhausting, profoundly physical work of the sculptor.
Which means committing to years, perhaps decades, of trial, error, practice, and inevitable failure. You have to take the chisel of action and forcefully strike away the excess rock of your psyche.
And what is that excess rock? It's the competing, chaotic drives we discussed earlier. It's the heavy layers of cultural conditioning, the inertia of laziness, the paralyzing grip of fear, the desperate need for peer approval. All of that is excess, dead stone that obscures the angel and must be violently struck away.
It's a brilliant paradox. It is simultaneously an act of discovery because you are finding the pre-existing angel and an agonizing act of creation.
Yeah.
Because you are the one swinging the hammer and doing the carving.
You are meticulously chiseling away the crude, unrefined shapes of your character to bring about greater refinement. Violently synthesizing your disparate virtues into one unified, unshakable whole, as Nietzsche triumphantly proclaimed, to make ourselves, to shape a form from various elements, that is the task of a sculptor, of a productive human being.
It perfectly resolves the riddle we started with. How do you become who you already are? It's the ultimate synthesis of finding and making. You find the template hidden in your admirations, but you forge the reality through the relentless friction of your daily actions.
Which leads us to a deeply necessary, if somewhat harsh, truth as we look to summarize the core journey of this framework. If you consume most modern personal development content, the implicit promise is almost always that once you finally find yourself, your life will instantly become frictionless.
Right, like you'll just float through life.
Yeah. You'll unlock the perfect stable income, your relationships will be devoid of conflict, your morning routine will be flawless, and you'll exist in this perpetual, unbothered state of zen.
But Nietzsche, and by extension Maslow, offers a crucial, unapologetic caveat to this entire endeavor. Committing to the sculpture of self is absolutely, unequivocally, not a recipe for an easy life.
Swinging a heavy mallet against solid marble for 12 hours a day is exhausting, painful work.
Exactly. Nietzsche firmly believed that it's the greatness of the soul, the depth of character, the capacity to endure, the realization of potential that constitutes the good life. Not the pursuit of fleeting pleasure, not the accumulation of comfort, and certainly not the attainment of frictionless external success.
Becoming who you are requires stepping into the arena and overcoming immense, crushing resistance.
You will face fierce internal resistance from your own biological desire to be lazy and safe. And you'll face relentless environmental resistance from a society that would be much...
To endure that, you have to develop a profound capacity to be deeply, fundamentally comfortable with discomfort. Because the act of chiseling away your own excess stone is inherently painful. Every time you fail at an experiment, every time you shed a comfortable illusion, the chisel bites into the stone. Growth is painful.
But the alternative, as Maslow so chillingly warned us, is the quiet, invisible, toxic pain, the metapathologies, the soul-crushing pain of the unlived life.
That is the ultimate binary choice this philosophy presents. You either actively choose the sharp, productive pain of the sculptor's chisel, or you passively succumb to the dull, suffocating pain of neglected potential.
It's a heavy choice.
It really is. Which leaves us with a final, lingering thought to mull over. Something for you to explore and dissect on your own as you step away from this deep dive and back into your daily routine. We've established that Nietzsche argues we must violently demolish our inherited cultural baggage to find the granite core of our true selves. And we've seen how Maslow argues that failing to actualize that core potential inevitably leads to deep, systemic psychological sickness. So consider this possibility. Is it possible that the chronic anxiety, the low-grade dread, or that nagging, unexplainable dissatisfaction you might be feeling right now, even in the midst of a perfectly comfortable, modern, climate-controlled life, isn't a chemical malfunction of your brain at all?
That's a powerful question.
Is it possible that those feelings of dread are actually the muffled, desperate sounds of your inner statue, trapped beneath years of excess marble, violently demanding to be carved out of the rock?